Welcome to Ecstatic Yoga. Asana 2, Classical, Modern, Colonial, Hatha Yoga lesson. I am Grace. So happy you are here. Yoga has a rich and ancient history, yet much is so ancient we are still discovering the gifts. Before the ancient yogic texts were created, yoga was taught as an oral transmission. The first writings were transcribed on fragile palm leaves, many lost and damaged. It is difficult to know how far back in history yoga began. We have texts dating back over 5,000 years ago, yet some researchers date yoga back 10,000 years ago. At this time, historians have divided the history of the practice and development of yoga into 4 main periods: pre-classical yoga, classical yoga, post-classical yoga, and modern, colonial, and Hatha yoga. Let's go over the pre-classical yoga. Beginnings of yoga root back over 5,000 years ago and were originally developed by the India's Sarasvati civilization in North India. The Rig Veda, one of the oldest sacred Vedic texts, was the first to mention the word yoga. The Vedas were written and used by Vedic priests called Brahmins in India over 5,000 years ago, offering mantras and rituals and songs for enlightenment. The Brahmins and rishis were known as mystic seers. They documented many yogic practices and spiritual beliefs in the Upanishads. The Upanishads is a massive collection of spiritual texts derived from Indian saints, Brahmins, and rishis, and has become the very roots of yoga. The Upanishads contain over 200 scriptures, inspired over many years. The Upanishads documented yoga practices and spiritual beliefs aimed towards self-realization and God realization. During this pre-classical period of yoga was an outpouring of new ideas, beliefs, techniques. What is important to know is that all the Indian saints didn't always agree, and often they contradicted one another. During this pre-classical period was when the idea of ritual sacrifice was transformed from an external process to an internal process of sacrificing the ego through the divine action of karma yoga and the wisdom of jnana yoga. The most renowned yogic scripture of this period is the Bhagavad Gita, composed around 500 BCE. Classical yoga. The classical period of yoga is primarily defined by the first systematic presentation of yoga explained in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, written in the 2nd century. Here is where the first organized techniques and principles of yoga were derived. Patanjali, known as the father of yoga, is famous for his Yoga Sutras organized into what is called Raja Yoga, or kingly or classical yoga. It has its focus on control and liberation of the mind. It includes Patanjali's 8 limbs of yoga. So let's go over the 8 limbs. The first limb is the yamas, abstaining from harming others, harmlessness. Non-violence, harmlessness. So there's 5 yamas. The first is non-violence, harmlessness. Second, truthfulness. The third is non-stealing. The fourth is not wasting our energy. And the fifth is abstaining from hoarding or being greedy. The second is the niyamas, principles to apply in our daily lives. The first is cleanliness and purity of body and mind. Second is contentment. Third is discipline. Fourth is study. And the fifth is devotion. The third yama is asana, which is the yoga poses, postures of the seat. Fourth is pranayama, intensifying, enlivening, and mastering the life force energy. 5 is pratyahara, sense withdrawal, withdrawing from external distractions and inner reflection. 6 is dharana, concentration, focused attention. 7 is dhyana, which is uninterrupted flow of meditation. And the 8th is samadhi, bliss, liberation, awakening, pure conscious awareness, union with the divine, direct experience. Patanjali's 8-limb path of yoga is still very popular and practiced all over the world today. The ultimate goal of Patanjali's 8-limb path is samadhi, a deep state of expanded conscious awareness that includes states of bliss, spiritual liberation, and awakening. Post-classical yoga. A few centuries after Patanjali's Raja Yoga, yoga masters began to change their interest. They turned away from the ancient Vedic teachings and embraced a whole new system of yoga called Tantric Yoga. Tantric Yoga is not just about sex, it's about embracing the entire physical body and achieving enlightenment through deep connection and oneness with the physical body. Yoga masters found that it helped their students to meditate in silence after rigorous physical exercises and body-centered practices. They found to include the physical body in the practice of yoga helped students quiet the mind and reach samadhi, the ultimate goal of yoga. Tantric yoga is a body-centered practice with techniques and practices aimed at cleansing the physical body of traumas and energies held in the body tissues. What some call radical techniques at the time, yet simple physical, emotional practices used to transform energies in the body and mind that held students back from enlightenment. Body-centered practices for self-realization, releasing that which no longer serves, letting go of that which blocks the awareness of love's presence. The goal of Tantric Yoga is liberation from the body and mind and freedom from the cycle of reincarnation. Tantric Yoga is also aimed at creating vibrant physical health and extending the life expectancy of the body through wellness. Body-centered tantric practices led the way for the creation of Hatha Yoga and modern yoga. Modern colonial period. The modern period of yoga began in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and is also called colonial due to the British colonization of India at the time. In the 1920s and 30s, India yoga masters T. Krishnamacharya Swami, Sivananda, and others were teaching and promoting Hatha Yoga in India. That included a focus on the asana, the physical postures and poses. In 1893, at the Parliament of World Religions in Chicago, Swami Vivekananda gained enormous interest in his lectures and practices of Hatha Yoga. Yoga masters from India began traveling to the West to introduce yoga to the Western countries, attracting followers at a slow yet steady pace. With the onset of British colonization in India, Hatha Yoga had initial struggle in mainstream acceptance, many claiming Hatha to be bizarre, threatening, even backward. Mass circulation of information in India degraded Hatha Yoga as those practicing physical contortists and occult magic. British colonists found Hatha Yoga very threatening. Although mainstream media in India tried to suppress Hatha Yoga, it continued to rise in interest not only in India, but all over the world. Hatha Yoga, focusing on the physical body, became the hallmark of modern or colonial yoga. In 1924, Krishnamacharya opened the very first Hatha Yoga school in Mysore, India. He initiated 3 yoga students from his lineage to continue his legacy. The initiation took place on the banks of the holy Ganges River. These 3 students were BKS Iyengar, TKV Desikara, and Patibi Jose. Krishnamacharya hoped these students would increase the popularity of Hatha Yoga, as they did. Swami Srivananda founded his first Hatha Yoga school, Divine Life Society, in 1936. Sivananda went on to open 9 ashrams and many yoga centers located all over the world. Sivananda was a brilliant writer and authored over 200 books on yoga. Interest in Hatha Yoga in the West really began to pick up in momentum in 1947 when Indra Devi opened her Hatha Yoga school in Hollywood, California. Since that time, many more yoga gurus and masters came to the West from India. Also, many pronounced yoga teachers arose from the West. Hatha Yoga now has many different styles, forms, schools, and techniques, and millions of followers. Hatha Yoga. Hatha Yoga is a branch of yoga that became popular in the modern period of yoga history. Hatha is a Sanskrit word meaning force and points to a system of physical techniques and effort. Although Hatha Yoga is gained its popularity in the modern period of yoga, it has deep roots dated back to the yogis, which reached its peak in the 7th to the 9th century. Almost all Hatha Yoga has its roots as far back in the Nath Siddhas founded by the saint Matsyendrath. He is celebrated as a saint in both Hindu and Buddhist Tantric and Hatha schools. Important Nath Siddhas texts are credited to Matsyendrath's disciple, Goraknath or Gorakshanath. The oldest dated texts on Hatha Yoga are from the 11th century, from the Amtastidi and the Vajrayana, both from Buddhist lineage. Hatha Yoga further developed into practices of mudras and raising the kundalini through energy channels like chakras and nadis. In the 20th century of modern yoga, Hatha Yoga is a focus on the asana or physical postures. Modern Hatha Yoga in the 20th century is most often referred to as yoga. Most of the forms of yoga that are popular today, like Ashtanga, restorative, Vinyasa, power yoga, are all called Hatha Yoga. Hatha Yoga has been recently described as a form of yoga that is slower with a focus on alignment. A notable difference between Hatha and Vinyasa yoga would be that Vinyasa classes move more quickly, while Hatha moves slower with guidance on how to move into, hold, and move out of each pose correctly. Hatha yoga is great for beginners and experienced yoga students. It moves slowly, yet keeps the mind from wandering by breaking down each pose and focusing on alignment. Hatha is a great form of spiritual practice of poses, meditation, and pranayama that can benefit a wide range of skill levels. Hatha yoga classes vary from instructor to instructor, yet they usually include a centering, short breath work, series of poses, and savasana or relaxation. They move more slowly with a focus on the breath. Hatha yoga possible benefits: improves strength, flexibility, balance, decreases anxiety, improves fitness, endurance, body image, and it can reduce pain. In this modern time of greater focus on Hatha yoga or physical body postures, we also seem to be embracing the subtle energy bodies and practices, integrating more and more meditation and pranayama, as well as anatomy. These also seem to be there also seems to be a greater and greater interest and respect for the origins of yoga and ancient yogic philosophies. Kriya yoga and yogic philosophy has become more popular in recent years, as well as Tantric, Karma, Jnana, and Bhakti. Most important in your yoga journey is to open your mind to all the aspects of yoga, the deep ancient past, as well as modern inspiration, and find what interests and pulls your heart. Find your area of interest and your preferred style that reflects your natural personality. Ecstatic Yoga Hatha. Ecstatic Yoga has a strong Hatha influence in our asana practices, and it is a powerful practice in attaining deeper and deeper states of sacred embodiment and body awareness. Presence helps you to be present in your body and your practice. Awareness, moving slower, brings conscious awareness into the body. Alignment helps with proper alignment. Positive body image. Adding the breath and bandhas with body awareness helps the student feel more confident, loving, positively connected to the body. Sacred embodiment. In order to sense the inner sacredness, we need to slow down and bring our awareness to that presence. With Hatha Yoga and Ecstatic Yoga, we focus on the asana, meditation, and pranayama. Those three are the biggest focus with Ecstatic Yoga, so that we can move into our poses, move into meditation, and reach those samadhi states, and reach those states of ecstasy and rapture meditation. And pranayama, so that we can balance the energy systems, all the body systems, including all the energy systems within the body, the nadis and the chakras and the meridians, pranavayas, all the systems in the body. So thank you for joining me for this class on the modern and the classical and Hatha, a Colonial and Hatha Yoga lesson, a little history on yoga, bringing us to the modern Hatha practice that we have in our ecstatic yoga. And ecstatic yoga is also whole harmonious yoga. So we are very happy to include a wide spectrum from very quiet, still mindfulness meditation and samadhi, deep, deep samadhi states, to pranayama, breath, revitalizing energy systems, building vitality in the body, studying philosophy. We focus a lot on Patanjali's 8 limbs, where we practice harmlessness and we practice some of the lifestyle skills and moving through the Patanjali's 8 limbs to reach that state of samadhi. And then asana and the Hatha Yoga, moving the body and focusing on the breath, engaging the bandhas, so that we can be present, we can build that energy and prana in the body. And then moving into ecstatic and rapture meditation, walking meditation, and self-love, all boiling down to the greatest self-love and becoming one with all aspects of the being, including that divine source within us. Ecstatic yoga, sacred embodiment, whole harmonious yoga is very focused on inner direction, bringing the awareness inward to the kingdom of heaven, to that source. The source dwells within. We find the source when we go into meditation and we practice the pratyahara, withdrawing from the outer and diving into the inner infinite universe and allowing those limbs to take us from pratyahara, from asana to pranayama to pratyahara to dhyana to samadhi, so that we can have that ultimate experience of becoming deeper and deeper connected in that loving state with that divine self and the divine God of our understanding that dwells within. And yoga is a powerful process to help assist us in joining all the aspects of ourself so that we become one with divine self and the physical self. I am Grace. Thank you so much for joining me for this class on Asana 2 class on our history of the classical, modern, colonial, and Hatha Yoga. Wishing you a most beautiful and most blessed day. Namaste.